Figtalk Prime here, back again with another video, and on this episode of Figtalk, I wanted to kind of get into McFarlane a little bit. As you can see in front of me, I have the BVS Batman. It actually is one of my favorite McFarlane figures. I was overall pretty satisfied with this, but it's not perfect, and it's kind of a perfect encapsulation on where McFarlane went with the DC license, why it looks like they're going to be losing the DC license next year. Mattel bought it back, so at some point in 2026, we're going to start seeing figures coming back from Mattel for the DC Universe line, and where McFarlane's going to go now. Like, their Mortal Kombat figures are dropping and hitting the hands of folks. I do not have any pre-ordered. Frankly, they were all not worth the value to me at $30 MSP. It just seemed to be too much for what you're getting. And then locking Melina and Sub-Zero with the extra effects behind a 2-pack, and Katana being a GameStop exclusive, it's just a little too much. But, you know, when you think about McFarlane in the past, especially, you know, in the 90s and early 2000s, 2010s, I mean, the figures were outstanding for the time. I mean, incredibly close to what you would get for comic book art. But as time passed, you know, I honestly feel that time has passed them by a little bit. And what I mean by that is, for example, the 22 parts of articulation that McFarlane likes to tout on the majority of their figures, we haven't seen an evolution of that in quite some time. And a lot of the same restrictions that we've seen and talked about in the past with past figures, there hasn't been really that much of a change. You have the old diaper system, you know, the typical McFarlane hips where you can't get a full split. You know, depending on the figure and how loose it is out of the packaging, you might get some thigh swivel, but it's still not equivalent to a thigh cut. You still have pins on a lot of these figures, and for something that goes on, you know, the hyper accurate look, like on this BVS Batman figure, you're still actually missing a lot of paint details that even the old school Mattel figures from the BVS line back in 2016 actually nailed the details of. You know, those figures were lower quality and a lower scale, but they were still getting like the gold highlights on the boots, the gloves, the weathering on the suit. The grapple gun actually had some paint details on it. So it makes me wonder, like, are these things that DC and Warner Brothers took into account when these companies were coming in to pitch, you know, on this next license for DC figures? You know, I had hoped that since the Mortal Kombat line got announced last year at last year's Comic-Con, and it was teased, that we would have seen a bit of an evolution from the McFarlane figures. You know, like, hey, like, we acknowledge we're losing the DC license, but, you know, we got this great thing coming out with the Mortal Kombat figures, and we're really gonna take it a step forward. And we just don't see that. And part of that is the economic climate that's happening right now. I don't want to get too much into that because that borders on politics, so I'm not gonna dive too much into that. But for $30 for what you're getting for these figures, it's a bit of a tough ask, especially when these aren't like brand new body molds that McFarlane specifically is building out for, you know, this new line of Mortal Kombat Classics line. It's probably either a reused body from the Mortal Kombat 11 line or just a DC Multiverse body buck that's being used. So you're getting the same points of articulation, very limited accessories on a lot of figures, not even alternate fist options. Like Scorpion doesn't come with additional hands, which is ridiculous. Like, the whole point is you want to get these figures in hand and you want to pose them, you want to take pictures of them, you want to get your photography and diorama sets, all in awesome poses, and it really limits the play value. You don't even get trading cards with these. You just get the display stand, maybe an additional hand, but sometimes not. On the Liu Kang figure, for example, like, you get a couple of fists, but that's it. Like, nothing to help display a fatality or backdrop or anything. So it makes me really think that we're gonna see quite a bit of change here coming out with Mattel. And I know Mattel didn't make great use of the license before they lost it. But if you look at what they're doing with the WWE line, you have basic figures, elite figures, and ultimate figures. The ultimate figures have, take some water here. Ultimate figures have higher levels of articulation than the elite. The elites have higher articulation than the basics. And this is where I would hope that we would have seen that change from McFarlane. Keep the 22 points of articulation for these collector editions, but if you're coming out with like deluxe theatrical editions and now the elite edition figures, give us more points of articulation. Give us, additional head portraits, swappable arms, more accessories, backdrops, like everything. Like, I think one of the best figures that the McFarlane line has released this year was actually the Berserker figure. And for $50 MSP, that actually had a really good value. I mean, it had multiple head portraits, it had swappable arms, it had a multitude of guns and accessories, and you can make the argument, like, okay, I actually feel like I'm getting my value's worth. You have something like Maximum Series Spider-Man, and the price has been argued to in infinite degrees, so I don't want to get too much into there, but you can say that at least there is some level of value in the figure. The figure, even though it feels like a typical Marvel Legends figure, still has a couple of additional points of articulation than your standard Spider-Man release. It came with some additional accessories that you wouldn't get with your Spider-Man release. Came with more hands than your typical Spider-Man release. And was it overpriced? Sure. But I think for what we got, if it was priced at $39.99 or even $44.99, it would have been okay. But we're now seeing McFarlane on this last year with the DC line. We have Zatanna, which has been a character that's been asked for repeatedly every year. And now it looks like it's going to be locked behind, it's in an elite edition coming out with Detective Chimp pack-in figure. That's probably not going to be very well articulated. You're going to get pins. It's probably going to be light on accessories. Like, I think all collectors want to see, especially in this economic times where we're being asked to put out a lot of money, is we want to get the value for what our money's worth. And for the longest time, McFarlane was really good about that. For the price that you're getting, $20 to $25, even a couple of years ago, you're getting a handful of accessories, maybe a flight stand, trading card. That was great. Even the collector's editions, when they were $30, you're still getting multiple hands, multiple head portraits, a display stand with maybe an additional accessory. We now have cloth good bendy wire capes, which has been fantastic. And we're even seeing issues with that now. Figures that should have bendy wire capes, i.e. Batman, not including it. And it just seems inexplicable, like unexplainable. Like why are we doing this? So just some thoughts that I wanted to kind of share and get off my chest regarding McFarlane. The reason I even care, this is the first line like I really got into when I got back into collecting during the pandemic. You know, a lot of my first run figures was between Transformers and McFarlane. I didn't really get into Marvel Legends really heavily until late 2023 or early 2024. And now that and G.I. Joe Classified's kind of starting to take over. So I want to see McFarlane do well. I want to see them continue to innovate and improve with whatever major licenses are going to go forward. And I would love to see them take action figure design to the next level. Like, give us more points of articulation and engineer ways to figure out how to hide the joints. Like, if McFarlane and the team doesn't like seeing all these breakages in regards to the articulation POAs, you know, engineer a new method to get rid of them. But that's all I want to say about that. A little bit of a rambling take, but I want to thank everybody for tuning in. I hope everybody's having a fantastic day. Keep enjoying the hobby. Keep having fun. You know, this is something that's supposed to bring us peace and enjoyment. So take out your figures, pose them, play with them, set up your awesome diorama shots, do your figure photography, do your posing, and let's just keep enjoying the hobby and having fun. Peace out, y'all.